today. Well, let's catch up with her live because she's been looking at these stories and more across this week in Davos. And Davos is starting to wrap up, Francis. But let's talk just about that last report that you had on women. And I know this is a conversation that you've had several times here in South Africa. Focus on women.
Yeah, it was heartening for me, Peter, to see these very, very big names in business, these male business leaders all coming together on the sidelines of Davos, and a lot of their schedules are packed. People like these CEOs come here with packed schedules, so I'm glad that this is a priority, and it really was heartening. It was interesting, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka's take on the whole debate, because a lot of analysts say, you know, women themselves have even recognized that women often don't ask for the pay rises, for example, that men do, and sometimes you get when you ask. There are things like that. Women often don't study the hardcore financial or scientific fields. They don't enter those fields. So there's a bit of a self-selection going on. But she said what's more important is men who are used to dealing with other men. We know that men often, all people in fact, choose successors like themselves. So she said this change is incredibly positive. It was heartening.
Well, I suppose another woman that probably was getting quite a bit of attention, given our nuclear ambition, was Tina Jomo-Pedersen, the Minister of Energy. And you caught up with her a little bit earlier on. What did she have to say about this whole energy story?
Well, she was updating on some discussions here, and what she said is that government has received commitments from the private sector that investors are very excited about renewable energy, specifically in South Africa. So there is already an allocation, I think it was 6,000 megawatts, I stand to be corrected, but that allocation, she says, has basically been doubled. So while the first tranche is being put online, we can already start looking to the second tranche. I did ask her about nuclear energy. Everybody wants to know, are we going to go ahead with this big nuclear deal? Is it safe? We know that big projects are often open to more corruption. There are concerns about us being farming out our electricity infrastructure to Russia or China because we cannot afford the big build that government is talking about. She did make an interesting point for me. She said that the renewable energy program has been much bigger than what they're planning to spend on nuclear. And she said Spain and various other countries have been involved, so then we should be worried about them. So basically, it's a commitment that this will be transparent. She said it will be dealt with in the same way, and there's been no concerns about renewable energy. But it seems like that major issue, nuclear energy, hasn't been discussed too extensively or resolved here in Davos.
Talk about renewable energy. The African Development Bank has pledged $12 billion towards energy on the continent, and they're saying that this really is pointing to us, I suppose, jumping onto this fourth industrial revolution, as it's been termed.
Yeah, we spoke about this briefly yesterday, the president of the African Development Bank saying something quite pithy. This fourth industrial revolution is about technology, this coming wave of innovation and change, incredible things expected to happen because of the speed of change will just be so incredible. But how can we as Africa reap the benefits when more than 50% of the population that's without electricity resides in Africa? So this is a crucial initiative. It does, I must stress, rely on the voluntary involvement of countries to up their own spend on electricity. The African Development Bank lends for infrastructure projects, so it's going to prioritize those. But good to see Africans coming together, and I think his point is right. I also, just briefly, a short while ago, Peter, I caught up with Koos Becker, the chair of NASPAS, and he was saying what is coming, it's real. Machines, robots are becoming more and more advanced and more likely to take jobs, even high-level jobs. He was talking about paralegal jobs being automated. So that's a change coming. Africa has to be ready for it, has to upskill, and at least we're starting with a very fundamental thing, which is power.
Now, President Jacob Zuma has been on the charm offensive, and in an earlier report he was quite confident that he'd been able to talk positively and persuade people to come to South Africa. Is it too early to assess whether Team South Africa has been successful this week?
I think, we could reap some dividends down the line. Peter, there's so many conflicting interests here in Davos, and Team South Africa has been trying. There's been press conferences, there's been some events at a beautiful museum where Team South Africa is set up, but the attendance has been low. But I need to put that in perspective, because I've been to press conferences where Kofi Annan is speaking and the attendance is low, where we have prime ministers from very big European nations and the attendance is low, because there's just so much going on. So it's really hard to compete. I personally think that our message has been lost in the wash, especially in terms of the main agenda. Europe, the refugee crisis, European leaders, their problems, a possible Brexit. That's been the focus, I would say, of the main events. The Syrian crisis affecting the whole of Europe has been dominating the main agenda. But on the sidelines, we don't know if the president speaks to investors, maybe that will yield benefits down the line. So I think we'll only know down the line how those side events have gone. And Koos Becker, to bring him in again, said that Africa is very low on the agenda, but the networking is so important, and the relationship, and because government and business has to be here presenting a united front, what it really helps with is that relationship that is often conflicted at home, but now these business leaders and government here in Davos, in neutral territory, are talking and resolving issues.
Francis, that's where we're going to have to leave it, I'm afraid. But thank you so much for all the coverage that you've brought us over the last few days from Davos. And I know you're going to try a bit of skiing. Please don't fall.